We know a lot about King Saul, David, Solomon, and a few other kings of Israel. Today, we will be reflecting about one of the rare and uncommon kings, but who can teach refreshing spiritual lessons for our life. In the second book of Chronicles, chapters 14, 15 and 16, we find the narrative about King Asa of Judah. There's an inexplicable urge to share the hidden lessons, rather treasures with you, my YouTube channel viewers. Who is King Asa? To know who King Asa is, we need to have a comprehensive knowledge of the historical background of Israel. Israel was ruled by three great kings, as I said in the beginning: Saul, David, and Solomon. David's son, King Solomon, began his rule well. God appeared to him twice. When God appeared to him for the first time, he asked Solomon what he desired. Solomon, in response, asked for wisdom to rule people with justice and to know the difference between good and evil. God was highly pleased, as we read in first book of Kings chapter 3 verse 5. King Solomon thus began his rule well. He built a magnificent temple for God in Jerusalem. God was very pleased with him. In the second appearance, again God commanded Solomon not to marry foreign wives because they would lure him to worship alien gods. But Solomon did not pay heed to God's commandment. He turned away from God and married 700 women and also had 300 concubines. This annoyed God. God was angry with Solomon for deliberately disobeying him. Therefore, as we read in the first book of Kings chapter 11 verses from 1 to 13, God decided to divide the kingdom of Israel into two. Division of the kingdom into two was a momentous turning point, having far-reaching effects and consequences in the history of Israel. The northern kingdom was called Israel, with the Samaria as capital. The southern kingdom was called Judah, with Jerusalem as its capital. Henceforth, Israel is no more a single country. Therefore, one has to pay attention carefully to know where the king is from, whether he is from Israel or Judah. The northern kingdom was ruled by 19 kings, starting from Jeroboam, a servant from the palace of Solomon, and the southern kingdom by Solomon's son Rehoboam. God said, "For the sake of my son David, I will give Judah and Benjamin tribes to Judah and 10 tribes to Israel." God was highly pleased with his servant David's faithfulness to him. In the light of the above background, let's now approach the narrative closely in chapters 14, 15 and 16 from the second book of Chronicles. We read in the second book of Chronicles, chapter 12, verse 14. Rehoboam was an evil king, for he did not seek the Lord with all his heart. Rehoboam, king of Judah, the son of Solomon, died, and his son Abijah succeeded him as the next king of Judah. In 14:1 we read, when King Abijah died, his son Asa became the next king, the third king of the southern kingdom of Judah. Under him, people enjoyed peace for 10 long years. The life story of King Asa is found in second book of Chronicles, chapter 14, 15 and 16, and in the first book of Kings, chapter 15, verses 9 to 24. The beginning of King Asa's reign. We learn from the Bible narrative that King Asa started his reign on a positive note like Solomon and Jehoshaphat. King Asa did, as we read in chapter 14:2, he did what was pleasing and good in the sight of the Lord. That means Asa was very faithful to God and encouraged the inhabitants of Judah to seek God of their ancestors and to obey his laws and commandments. These righteous deeds pleased God, and as a consequence, Asa's kingdom enjoyed a period of unhindered peace. Note the Bible verse, doing what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord. Though he started well, King Asa did not end well like Joash. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as we read in second book of Kings, chapter 13, verse 11. Rather, he missed his chance to destroy the army of the king of Aram because he failed to place his trust in the Lord, despite being warned by Hanani the prophet. We may start well, but do we end well? Let the sad end of King Asa, who did not end well, serve as a forewarning to all of us to avoid making mistakes that he made towards the end of his life. The history of King Asa is our history too. The Apostle Paul refers to several incidents that occurred in the Old Testament and points out that all these have been recorded for our instruction and caution. We read in his letter to Romans chapter 15:4, such things were written in the scriptures long ago to teach us. Everything written in the Bible for our instruction and for our life. When Ethiopians invaded Judah, King Asa cried unto the Lord and prayed to him, O Lord, you are our God. Do not let mere men prevail against you. As we read in 2 Chronicles 14:11. Consequently, God granted him a resounding and decisive victory. Since he relied on God and prayed to him, Ethiopians fled from the battlefield. After the battle, God sent his prophet Azariah to meet the victorious king and convey an important message to him, as we read in 2 Chronicles 15:2. Worth remembering these verses. Listen, all you people of Judah and Benjamin. The Lord will stay with you as long as you stay with him. Whenever you seek him, you will find him. But if you abandon him, he will abandon you. Seek the Lord, and the Lord will stay with you. Asa and the people responded positively and agreed to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, with all their heart and soul. Asa initiated a big revival in his kingdom, and he ordered everybody to worship only Yahweh and no other God. King Asa even took from his grandmother Makkah, the queen, and destroyed her obscene pole erected in honor of her foreign idol Ashvera. The kingdom of Judah enjoyed years of peace and prosperity. There was no more war till his 35th year, as we read in 2 Chronicles chapter 15 verse 19. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, King Baasha of Israel invaded Judah and started fortifying Ramah by building a wall in order to prevent access to anyone from entering or leaving Jerusalem, the capital city of Judah. What do you think should have been the appropriate action of Asa at this time? What did he do earlier when Ethiopians and Libyans and their vast armies with all of their chariots and charioteers invaded Judah? He called upon the Lord. Shouldn't he have relied on God all the more now than he did earlier? This time, however, he forgot to call upon the Lord. Instead, he took silver and gold from the treasuries of the temple of the Lord and the royal palace and sent them to the neighboring king, King Ben-Hadad of Aram. He forged an alliance with this king neighbor by entering into a treaty. From then on, King Asa had to be continually at war with his neighbors. Hanani the prophet reminded King Asa of his foolishness in abandoning God, saying, "Don't you remember what happened to the Ethiopians and Libyans? At that time you relied on the Lord, and He handed them over to you. What a fool you have been! From now on you will be at war," as we read in 2 Chronicles 16:7-9. God sends His servants and prophets in our life when we lose track. King Asa did not pay heed to the prophet's caution and warning. He was blinded by his hideous powers and vain glory. His long years of reign must have drummed in him his myopic unassailability. So he imprisoned Hanani the prophet instead of listening to the good advice he was giving that came from the Lord. In his 39th year of reign, King Asa developed a serious foot disease. But even then King Asa refused to seek the Lord's help. Soon King Asa died a miserable death in his 41st year of reign. Let's for a moment take a closer look at our lives. How was our Christian life when we were young? With what intensity, eagerness and fervor did we go about learning and practicing the tenets of our Catholic faith, the Catechism, and to receive the sacraments of reconciliation, Holy Communion and Confirmation? Later, with what obedience, humility, joy, excitement, fire and zeal did some of us enter into religious life? Some received the sacrament of matrimony. We brought nothing with us. Everything was given to us as a free gift by God. St. Paul pointedly asks in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 7, "What do you have that God hasn't given you? And if everything you have is from God, why boast as though it were not a gift?" Today, after getting everything, free formation in religious life, education, good food, medicals, freedom, money, friends, job, etc., we begin to grumble and demand our rights, expediently forgetting our past. When we made our vows, what readiness and willingness we had, and what zeal for God's kingdom. That time our prayer was, "Lord, here I am. I surrender my whole being. I am ready to do anything for you. I am ready to carry the cross. I take the vow of poverty, vow of obedience, and vow of celibacy." We projected God in all our blessings. Now, after getting everything that too freely, whom do we project? What becomes our priority? Are we inclined to listen to His voice or our own? Are we close to God now and listen to His voice? When difficulties knock us down, we approach the Lord and cry. But when everything goes well, when occupying chairs, power and position getting degrees, we assume to ourselves the credit for our importance and prominence. As we read in Revelation chapter 2 verses 4 and 5, the Lord says, "I have this complaint against you. You don't love me as you did at first. You have lost your original zeal and enthusiasm and the commitment with which we entered, and you have grown up. I have this complaint against you. You have lost your original zeal, enthusiasm, and love for me." What lessons does the life of King Asa teach us? Number 1, the importance of perseverance. Just as King Asa had to wage wars with his enemies and fight against idolatry, we may face trials, temptations, and challenges in our own lives. But like Asa in the beginning, we must continue seeking the Lord, for He will never forsake us. Lesson 2, the importance of strength. We must be strong in our faith and in our commitment to God. This strength comes from relying on Him and His power rather than our own strength. Just like St. Paul, we should assert, "For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength." Let's increase our faith in Him and move closer to Him. The third lesson, God puts us in circumstances where we have to rely on Him. Asa was hugely outnumbered when the Ethiopian king came out against him with an army of 1 million men. This battle seemed almost decided. So King Asa cried out to the Lord for help, saying, "O Lord, no one but you can help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, O Lord our God, for we trust in you alone. Do not let mere men prevail against you." His prayer we read in 2 Chronicles 14:11. and despite the odds, God gave him a resounding victory. Stay close to God and say your prayer with faith. When you pray, God begins to act. Numbers and actual realities do not matter to God. He can do anything. Lesson 4. Do what is right even when it comes to family. King Asa sought to honor God with all his heart and soul. And so, when he saw his own grandmother, the queen, who had made an obscene pole to Asherah, he did not cave to family pressure or give in to their expectations. At times, it can be very hard to stand up to family pressures. Life can be tough and testing when our family does not understand our faith. It is in times such as these one needs to be steadfast in our commitment to the congregation, not to the family, and in our faith and resolve. Lesson 5. Be willing to listen to and accept rebuke from others. When Hanani, the prophet, was sent by God at the right time to advise Asa, but King Asa, instead of listening and changing his life, he was outright enraged and sought to silence the prophet who came to tell him God's message. King Asa's erroneous response blemished his otherwise laudable and solid track record. Ignoring, despising, or spurning correction is foolhardy. Even if the one carrying out the correction is perhaps rude or ill-mannered. Are you open to the feedback of others and open to change your life? Lesson 6. When God gives you blessings, do not rely more on your own blessings and powers than God. God has blessed King Asa greatly with the riches from winning his battles. As a result, instead of relying on God, he relied on his own power and riches. Asa used his silver and gold to get Syria to help him, and it worked. But this displeased God greatly. Because you relied on the king of Syria and did not rely on the Lord your God, the army of the king of Syria has escaped you. Sometimes, when we are in the midst of a peaceful time in our lives, when everything in our lives is going right, it can be easy to ignore God and find more joy in our own riches, power and positions than in God, the giver of the blessings. One should continually rely on God in both good and bad times. Lesson 7. Don't grow weary in doing good and keep fighting the good fight. King Asa had an excellent start to his reign and initiated great reforms across the land of Judah. But towards the end of his rule, he grew weary in his devotion to the Lord and was complacent in his spiritual journey. Sadly, he did not finish strong and aplomb. His life serves as a warning to those of us who have perhaps been walking with the Lord for many years. May this serve as a wake-up call to all of us. As we read in Hebrew chapter 12 verse 1, Paul invites everyone to run with endurance the race that is set before us in such a way as to win the reward. The eighth and the last lesson Asa's life is teaching us: end well. King Asa did not end well, though he started well. In the 39th year of his reign, King Asa was afflicted with a serious foot disease. Even then, instead of seeking cure from the Lord and relying on God's healing, he solely relied on his power and other physicians. The downfall for Solomon was his wives. For Asa, it might have been his pride and arrogance. If you are not careful, something else might cause your downfall too. It could be your comfort seeking, your refusal to accept feedback, your attitude of might is right, your arrogant nature, your deafness and blindness to reality. You are going away far from the Lord than relying on Him. Examine yourself and seek God's grace and assistance to put you on the right track, not only to begin well, but end well and stronger together. For our reflection, Asa was much less receptive to hear God's voice than he had been when he was younger. How about you today after receiving everything from the Lord? What are the refreshing spiritual lessons has Asa taught you from his life so that we will be cautious? Thank you, friends. God bless you.